Hey friends, this is Shoy and I have Rishi here with me.
Hi, friends.
Mhm. We mostly want to talk a bit about what's transpired since the last 1 year as we worked on Viral, and we just want to give you regular updates. So this is the first episode in doing that where we want to come to you every week and give you updates on what we've been up to. Rishi, do you have things that we specifically want to talk about?
Yeah, specifically, we'll talk about a few things related to what has transpired since the SNS, and then subsequently would also love to show all of you that what are the different kind of innovations that we have done for building on the IC and what has been the output until now. And then we'll talk a bit more about how many videos do we have because there was something happening in the community wherein someone was asking that we just have 100 videos. So would love to show the community the total number of videos that we have and also talk a bit more about our future plans. But we'll have this as weekly updates, and then subsequently we'll also set up some places on our social forums wherein anyone can go ahead and ask any question, so that all the people in the community understand what we have built till now, and moving forward
So
can show more.
specifically, talking about we had our SNS. Do you remember approximately the date when we had our SNS?
Not the date specifically, but I remember the month. It was July 2023.
Okay.
So approximately around 1 year, 7, 8 months have transpired since then.
And
We were a team of almost five people, two developers. You were the backend developer, one front end developer, and then three people mostly in the marketing space. So just a very small team. And since then, of course, the team has also expanded. We can talk a bit more about
so I
that later.
think maybe we can just trace our journey from that start where we were just a team of two devs, a couple of other co-founders, and we did a successful SNS raise and then sort of trace our journey from there to where we are now. Because I think we've not put out a comprehensive video actually talking about what we've been doing since then. Maybe we can just talk about the finer points and exactly like some big items that we've covered during this entire tenure. Maybe we can just go into that.
Yeah, and specifically, we'll keep this all these videos as raw videos. We are not editing anything out of it. It's just coming out right now live. We would love to do streams, I think, sometime in the future. But just for
Yeah,
today's
I think we planned to do it, but there were some technical difficulties. I think next week onwards we want to do streams, and then anybody can join in these on a live basis and actually ask us any questions, and we'll answer them live.
and maybe we would want to have more streams and more these kind of videos so that everyone is aware on what are we building and what we have been up to, say, over the last few months. And just one thing before we start, it's very tough building on anything, be it web 2, web 3, and of course trying to compete with the biggest social giants in the world, something like a TikTok or Instagram. It's almost impossible. So with that thing, we'll just start and we'll dive a bit deep into what we have done until now. But just to set up context that nothing has been easy for us until now. Now we can move forward.
So I think it makes sense to sort of set some context in terms of like just pre-SNS where we were in terms of growth and scaling. Like, so a lot of questions might be asked like, hey, why did you even do the SNS, right? So maybe you can get into a bit of like where we were in terms of access to resources, what our user base maybe looked like, and till we got to the SNS where we were, because we can trace it even further back. But I think in the interest of time, for now, we are not getting into that. But maybe we can just talk a bit about like what our backend looked like, what was built on top of the IC, maybe what our user base looked like, and then what were the challenges that we were running into while sort of trying to scale at the same time doing the
Yeah.
SNS.
So essentially, we have mentioned in the forum post of the entire history of how we started and where we started and where all these things are coming in from. But also at the same time, just in the interest of time, we can just take a couple of minutes
So I
to.
think it makes sense to just quickly show something from Twitter, and that sort of helps set the context for this. So I probably have this bookmarked. Let's see. Yes. So this was just before where around the same time when we did our SNS. So this was the first time when sort of Dom acknowledged us and we sort of had the spotlight on us, because before this we were trying things, we were getting some adoption, so on and so forth. But this was like the key time when you can actually see that Dom publicly acknowledged that the entire ICP network felt like it was being DDoSed because we were just getting signups and people were actually coming onto that. I would also sort of point out, like, recently you'll hear on the forums that a lot of people are pointing and saying, ki, hey, why is it just from Indonesia and such? But the nature of these, uh, so we call them viral moments. So the nature of these viral moments are such that, like, you really can't predict where you get your traffic from. Ideally, in this case, what we later found out was there was a very big influencer from Indonesia who had actually gone into one of their social channels and shared their referral link. And essentially, multiple people were jumping onto that link and signing up, and that is what we were seeing over here. So, when Dom messaged us, we actually tweeted back showing him, like, hey, this is what we look at when we see our Google Analytics numbers. And this was an actual, like, it was like a small product market fit. The first time we experienced product market fit, and it was sort of our like first success moment.
You can see the date over here. It's 6th December 2022. So just imagine it was way before even we start preparing for the SNS, and way before of course today. But since then we have been gradually getting some spikes in numbers. Just a few random days, we cannot predict it, but primarily a few influencers share the link of our app here and there, and then subsequently there are a lot of spikes. And of course it's also related to campaigns sometimes. So during the SNS, we can come back to this later on, but during the SNS, we were doing an airdrop campaign for almost 4 weeks, and we saw tens of thousands of users, coming in to grab some hot tokens back then. And of course, we again, you cannot predict where this traffic will come from. So people just keep on sharing these links on their WhatsApp channels, Telegram channels, Discord channels, and so on and so forth. And wherever it becomes famous, people just come in. We have a lot of traffic from Nigeria, Indonesia, India, Vietnam, and of course the US. So it's pretty diverse. But in certain sprouts of growth, it comes from certain geographies, and then as it narrows down again, at its plateaus down, again traffic comes starts coming in from different places.
I think a lot of people also point out, like, hey, why do you only get users from Nigeria and Indonesia? It sort of makes sense to sort of look at this and understand ki why. And I feel like let's try and shed some light on that as well. So if you look at how social apps work and their incentive structures work, essentially these particular geographies. So Nigeria right now, if you look at, and I can maybe quickly Google that for you. So Nigeria unemployment rate, it's very high. So right now, if I look here, so it says 10.6 is where it was in the first quarter of 2024, and these are very high numbers. So essentially, a significant portion of the entire population has no primary earning capability in terms of a primary job. So for them, when they get an app where they can earn uh, some tokens, some airdrops for doing some activities, they really appreciate that fact, and you get a lot of numbers from these countries, essentially, even Indonesia. So there was this game that I'm forgetting the name of. Do you
I
remember?
think there were 2-3 games back in
Yeah,
2021
yeah.
and
It was
2022.
called Axie Infinity. So during the time of COVID and during the time of the lockdown, a lot of users would just play that game daily, and that is how they earned their daily wages, and that is how they earned their daily earnings, which was a big deal for them because that is how, like, that puts food on their table, right? So we, in a lot of developed countries, we might not appreciate the traffic that comes onto these apps from these perspective, but this is reality for them. And so essentially, in the forums and in a couple of places, we've been told, like, hey, you must be running bot farms or something to game this traffic, but we really don't. And this is how this actually plays out. If you really think about it, it makes sense. Cool. So I think we can progress now to the second point that we sort of wanted to cover. Like, so we had this initial surge of traffic. We spent a lot of effort and spent time to go through a successful SNS race. And again, like, we would really like to thank all of our supporters who helped us.
And especially Adam again. So although he's like pretty mad at something which we are not aware of, but yeah, special support, thanks, and then goes to Adam, who really supported us throughout the SNS journey. But again, there were quite a few investors, and we got hundreds and thousands of people who supported during the SNS. And before the SNS, we were also not pretty sure that if we should go through the SNS or not. We were in the US trying to raise capital for the project, and SNS journey had just started. OpenChat was the first organization to go through the SNS, and of course they were incubated by Definity early on. Hence, of course, the first project that got a lot of support for the SNS was OpenChat, and then subsequently, I think Kinnick came in, and then
We
we
did.
were yeah we were supported by Definity. So essentially, the spikes of traffic Definity saw, Dom saw, everyone in the ecosystem saw, and they understood that it's just not possible for us to survive or create a big enough app if we do not have capital. The VCs were primarily ignoring our request for capital. First of all, we were not from the US. That might just be one of the reasons. And the other reason was that they were not entertaining a lot of projects being built on the IC. One reason for that can be that most of the investors are chain specific. So, which means if you're a Solana investor, you might invest in the Solana ecosystem, or if you're a Cardano investor, you might invest in the Cardano. That might be one of the reasons. But of course, definitely came in and supported us during this entire process, and the potential, of course, of the app. Everyone saw through data, not just because we were just showing the app. It was all data, and TikTok is still growing everywhere in the world. And then there were talks of TikTok being banned also across the US.
Can you talk a bit about, just so that like the audience has context in terms of how big TikTok is currently, and then in terms of like a Web3 based short video app, what its potential reach and what its potential growth capability is?
So TikTok right now has almost, I think, I do not have the latest statistics, but back in the US, it had almost 150 million users, which is almost 50% of US population the last time I checked. And it was valued at 40 to 50 billion dollars in a private round. I think 75 billion dollars in a private round that I last checked. It's still not a public company, but of course they also come the TikTok founder also comes from a humble background, and
Do you want me to quickly Google that?
yeah, I think that will be pretty helpful, that how many active users are. Almost, I believe that there will be 6 to 700 million active users at this point of time, which
We'll
is too
just
huge.
look at the valuation and then TikTok. Okay. So I have not used this site before,
So,
but let's just check. So they claim around 1.12 billion. This
oh,
is slightly shy of the population of India. So this is a huge number. And let's look at valuations. So okay, this looks like a paid, but I think at some point when we were last speaking, it was anywhere between 300 to 400 billion because it's a private company. We don't have exact numbers, but it's around that range, right? So comparing that to what a Web3 based short video app can do, and comparing that to like how much we raised, uh,
back in the day, it was almost $4.5 million
mhm,
at the price of ICP being $4. We
mhm,
raised 1,074,000 ICP.
mhm,
So approximately around say
mhm,
$4.5 million, $4 to $4.5 million was our raise
mhm,
back at the same price.
mhm. And the reason I sort of bring that up is just to put in context, like if you're going up against a giant company that has come before and that has already progressed significantly, and you're trying to catch up while also trying to innovate, you need access to some amount of resources, some amount of capital. So just to put that in perspective also, so imagine a TikTok is sitting on such a huge war chest. They're actively able to do so much more. We are having to catch up, but there's also the contending forces of you're building on a blockchain, you're building on untested technology, you're basically trying to innovate on a completely new set of rules, on a completely new playing field, right? And you have so many more constraints, things are untested, things are constantly breaking, you're working with limited capital, and you're trying to make it while also onboarding users, while also trying to fix bugs, and while also ensuring that the stable experience that people expect from the latest and greatest, you're also able to deliver that. So it's a huge challenge. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Sure. So now going back to the discussion. So let's now progress further into what happened in the next subsequent couple of months. So we were able to do a successful SNS raise, and now we had a significant amount of capital, at least not to uh, in terms of being able to scale the team, and in terms of focusing on next set of challenges that we wanted to solve. So maybe just quickly Let's go through some of them and what are the things that we solved in the next couple of months. Because during the SNS raise, we more or less had uh, built a backend that had saturated the entire subnet. So just to give audiences some context, before we had at the very beginning we had like a single canister model where on a single canister we were storing everybody's data. That of course would not have scaled at all. We saw that bottlenecking at a very low number of users. I think 10,000 users was where we started bottlenecking.
That was long time back, I think 2022.
Yes.
And after that, we started working on
Yes.
the open chats model, which was the
Yes.
single user, single canister model.
Right.
Yeah.
So with the single user, single canister model, our initial implementation was still limited to a single subnet. So the way the IC works, obviously everybody here knows, but just to recount, so you have multiple subnets, each one of them consisting of 13 nodes, and then these subnets can talk to each other, and the entire set of all subnets makes up the IC network. So our implementation when we went through the SNS, that was just a single subnet implementation where we had one canister for every user, but then it could only be provisioned in a single subnet. That is how we had written the entire thing. The limitation with that was a single subnet can only accommodate so many canisters. And with protocol improvements, I think right now we are up to 100,000.
120,000, as far as I understand.
Sure.
I was reading Hamish's post one of the days, I think. Just a few
I
days
think
back.
OpenChat does a phenomenal job in terms of packing as many canisters into like a tight canister and running that well. We went down a different approach, but I think I'll talk more about that. So back then the number was much lower because again things were getting built out, and this is early IC as well. So do acknowledge like there were a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of things not as optimized as they are right now on the IC. So we only I think packed around 50,000. That was the hard limit that we had set on ourselves. I imagine we could have pushed a couple 5-10,000 more, but we did not because uh, essentially if you put too many canisters on the subnet, the entire subnet becomes sluggish. I think a lot of IC users right now run into this problem in some of the slightly older subnets. You have subnets where somebody like an ICP swap or people are hosted. Since there are so many canisters on them, sometimes there is sluggishness, sometimes they stop working, so on and so forth. So back then we took the decision that we ourselves would limit ourselves to 50,000 canisters and stop signups there. While signups were stopped, we were vehemently trying to move fast and rewrite the entire backend so that now, even if we had a million signups at the same time, we should be able to accommodate that. So the way that we figured out to do it was again multi-subnet, multi-canister. So we had already written a version where we had one single canister for every user on a single subnet. We just took that model and scaled it further. Where if a user comes in, our infrastructure looks at all the available subnets that we have, and essentially what we've done is we've put one canister in all of the general app subnets. So any of the subnets that IC has open, we have one canister present there. Now if a user signs up with us, we allocate a canister on any one of these subnets. So we do this in a round robin manner. That way again load balancing is done well. So essentially if you have hundreds of thousands of people signing up at the same time, it's not just going to a single subnet, it's going across all the subnets. So basically we are load balancing well across the entire IC. So having done that, now we had a new architecture where we had multiple subnets, all of them we were utilizing by provisioning one user's canister on a single.
So did we face any problems while we were building this? And is there any other app right now across the IC ecosystem who does that? And if there is no other app, why are not other apps doing this?
Yep. So quite a few things to unpack here. So the first thing to understand is it's not trivial to write this code. It's actually quite difficult to write this code because now you're orchestrating across network boundaries. So let me put this into context. So imagine previously we had like a two-tiered model where you had a dad talking to his children. Now we created another layer where you have a granddad telling the dad ki, hey, we need more dads in the different subnets, and then that dad has to go and create more children in their own subnet, right? So now you have three layers of orchestration happening, and all of this back and forth calling has to be coordinated between these canisters. So it's
a lot of cycles need to move through the entire.
Yes, I think so. This calls out to something that Adam was also posted on the forum. So I think he looked at our code, but I don't think he spent too much time looking at it. And the part that he specifically looked at was where we were transferring cycles. But do understand that if you have a lot of canisters, they have to be kept topped up. So this is going back to what you were asking, like what is the challenge of doing this and why doesn't everybody do this? So the first thing is it's very costly to run this infrastructure. Since you're trying to over provision for any number of users who can come in, you basically have a lot of initial canisters that you've spun up. And in the recent past, Definity has also made it, or I would say like the NNS has made it much more costlier to provision new canisters. So the previous cost of provisioning a new canister was 0.1 trillion cycles. That has gone up to 0.5 trillion, which means they have 5x the cost of creating a new canister on the network. I imagine this was primarily done to artificially slow down the growth of new canisters while new node providers could onboard and the network could expand. But it's mostly in the interest of the health of the entire IC network. So going back to what you were asking, so what did it take to build this? So, and then why don't multiple apps do this? So first of all, a lot of additional code has to be written to do all of this orchestration. It's not just simple copy paste from, let's say, some Stack Overflow or get GPT to write this code for us. We can't. So nobody has written this code before us. So actual humans would have to run this, test this, figure this out, and make this work. That was number one. Second thing is, in terms of why hasn't other people done it? So number one is the cost. Second is the complexity of writing this code. Most apps also don't need this kind of scale. So if you look at it, only social apps that need to onboard millions of users and do it in a very bursty or spiky. So, and we had run into this problem ourselves. So if you look at how we had users onboard, it was not a very linear graph. So you'll not have every day, let's say 10,000 users signing up and you can very predictably do that. It never happens like that. For any social app, you'll have that one viral moment where some big influencer, some big celebrity will share your app, and overnight you'll have to support millions of users coming onto the platform.
So something like a Trump coin launch, wherein the Trump coin came out, and
Yes.
of course millions of people jumped in, and all the other apps on Solana stopped working.
Yes.
Jupiter stopped working.
Yes.
The wallet
Yes.
stopped working primarily because it was not able to handle
Yes.
traffic.
Yes.
And that's what social apps generally are. That as soon as someone posts something about the social app, say one influencer posts something about say us Yral or Autonaut in that case,
Yes.
automatically we are expecting tens or thousands of people to come in on that particular day with no history of traffic coming in on each and every regular day.
Yes.
So which means our infrastructure needs to always absorb spiky traffic and not just take care of the gradual increase in traffic that most apps face.
Yes. And you see this happen quite a bit, especially with whenever you run very small airdrop campaigns also. We've seen this happen with our own network. So essentially, to load test this kind of infrastructure, we sometimes run airdrop campaigns. Every time we run an airdrop campaign, what we've noticed is the IC network slows down, and although we are provisioned on multiple subnets, some of those subnets become slow. So essentially, since our viral backend is running on multiple subnets, some users might experience slowdowns if their canisters are on the older subnets, but 70 to 80% of the users will not notice this. Whereas the subnets where older apps and these older canisters are present, they're noticing slowdown. So you'll notice somebody like an ICP swap goes down, or any of the other apps who are on a single subnet, they go down. We tried to program against that, and hence at this moment we are paying that extra cycle cost of having to over provision for this infrastructure. And this is where our canister numbers also come in. So essentially, right now we have over provisioned canisters to the point where we have approximately 300,000 active canisters running on the network, and we have 200,000 more canisters in backup in case more people sign up. We can quickly provision.
So my next question is that in hindsight, do you think that we could have done it any other way, like to handle any kind of spiky traffic that still we are preparing for? Is there any other way which was available, say by Definity, or they anytime they reached out to us saying that no, you can try this way, or any other way wherein any other app has tried a different method?
So I am not particularly aware of any large scale app having tried a different method, but one thing that Definity sort of in the future. So this was sort of like a timeline where initially we built this, we deployed this, we scaled it with some airdrops just to like load test the thing. So what we noticed was the entire network was slowing down. So definitely came back suggesting some alternatives. One of those alternatives was, instead of a single user per canister, why don't you stuff multiple users in a single canister? The problem with this is multifold. So number one is, at this point, we've already written out this entire infrastructure and we would have to stop new signups, new onboarding, new everything, and again go back to the drawing board and start from scratch and re-implement that.
So rewriting the entire architecture that we had say built for say a year or two.
Yes.
So that was one major problem.
Yes.
Okay.
The second thing is, if you look at more or less the successful apps on the IC, we can look at a couple. So number one, obviously the biggest example is OpenChat. So OpenChat runs on a single user, single canister model, and they're doing it phenomenally well. They have a slightly different architecture from us in that they take ownership of an entire subnet and then they fill it up to the brim. Only when that has saturated do they again put up a new NNS proposal to acquire a completely new subnet from the IC and then again do the same thing. To a certain extent, they can do that because I imagine till now they've not had spiky traffic, is what I understand. I could be wrong. But from
I
what
think
I understand,
yesterday or day before I saw something that the average user minutes had gone up, I think 10 times
but
in
that's
just one day.
minutes, right? So the expectation
Yeah.
is the single canister which has been given to a user that can keep running. That's not a problem. The problem is if you have 100,000 people signing up immediately on OpenChat, they would have to close signups.
Yeah.
Because a single subnet, let's assume 120,000 canisters, they've already saturated an entire subnet.
So they might face this problem sometime in the future, if not today. Like if say 200,000 people would want to come in an instant on OpenChat,
It's
then
not.
right now their scale is not at that level. They'll need to switch down signups and then take in this traffic gradually over a period of time.
Yep.
Okay.
Secondly, let's look at a couple of other examples. So if you look at the other social apps that have been built on IC, which more or less are still operating and operating at scale, I think Discover is another good example. So
I don't know, like if it still is or was, because
So-
primarily they have moved on to Solana. I
So
don't know if they're
what
still on
I am aware of, I might be completely wrong. What I am aware of, their core infrastructure still runs on ICP. So all of the user data, all of the post data that is being generated,
Okay.
that is running on canisters. The other thing to take note of, so this is, my impressions are from the last time I had checked whatever discussions and whatever forum posts were around this. So essentially, they initially had a single canister model and they would almost on a daily basis have to talk to Definity and do very micro optimizations just to squeeze out some more
The
performance.
DevOps cost was pretty high because the last time I met the founder of the company, he mentioned
It's
that
Rick Porter, right?
Rick Porter, yes. I met him in San Fran at one of the Definity events. So he mentioned that out of $300,000 that he used to burn monthly back in I think May June 2023, almost $150,000 per month was spent in DevOps, primarily because they were trying to host all these canisters, all these users in a single canister model, which of course was it was giving them a lot of headache in around this. Yeah.
So I had heard similar things. So I think I try to be in close contact with a lot of Definity engineers as we also troubleshoot similar things. So I think I remember probably Ulan, who is right now one of the engineers on the Definity team. So he used to at some point have to on a regular basis sort of troubleshoot with them on how they can squeeze out every last bit of performance from a single canister. So at some point, and this is, I think you can Google this on the forums and like search on the forums, you'll find these conversations. So Discover had this concept. It's kind of like for everybody who doesn't know, Discover is kind of like a Reddit style forum discussion. So essentially you have like spaces or like communities for individual discussion areas. So they basically created a similar mechanism where they had one canister for one community's discussion area, and then multiple people can join that. But the topics and the posts for a single, imagine like Reddit, subreddit. I think the term is subreddit. It's very similar to like a subreddit. So every subreddit it becomes a new canister. and that is how
Okay.
they are also trying to scale. I think even Adam, who's so angry at us at the moment, uh, last time, so we speak to Adam, we used to speak to Adam quite a lot around how they are also structuring their backend, and even Gabriel, who is another prolific Rust dev in the ecosystem and on the Dragon stream. So I remember having a discussion at some point in the past. So they have these concept of worlds where it's kind, think of it like a, well, I don't want to sort of exactly spoil the surprise, but they have these concept of worlds where
It's
every,
again like a subreddit only, is it?
it's more like what is that game where you have to mine things and Minesweeper,
Mine,
not
craft mine.
Minesweeper.
No,
Sorry, what
what's
is
the name? Craft miner. I
no,
don't
no, no.
know. Yeah, you
The
know.
pixelated game where you get axes and I'm forgetting the
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
so there you have this concept of worlds, and even in their case also the way they are sort of going to scale is you have different worlds that players can join, and every world is a single canister. There are even more examples. I think if I can recall, another social app on the IC ecosystem is Catalyze. So the way Catalyze also initially tried to build was, I imagine, a single canister or multiple single canisters, but then the current architecture, from what I remember, and they, like a couple of months back, I think, not a couple of months, but quite some months back, they were sort of going through a backend rewrite. They were also moving to a place. So Catalyze is also similar around the idea of communities and communities having their own Discord servers. It's kind of very similar. So they also went through the same journey where they realized that every community or every server needs to be its own canister. So more or less, this had already been validated by multiple apps who were running in production and who were trying to scale. So it sort of validated our own assumptions, because I think OpenChat was the first one. I think we were sort of the second one, but we did this slightly different in that we were provisioned, like over provisioned to scale even further. Apart from us too, even these projects have also gone down the similar route. So just to go back to like the question was primarily like how difficult was it? It was fairly difficult, and we had to close down signups while we were figuring this out. So closing signups is like the last thing you want to do as an app that wants to scale and that wants to have users. Like users want to come to you, but you're saying, hey, no, we can't take you on. You have to close signups because we are just figuring things out.
So for quite a few months, as far as I remember, for almost 4 to 6 months, we were rewriting the entire backend, and then our signups were switched off, and no one could use the app. Primarily, only existing users. Of course, they also lost touch because they were not getting any monetary benefits out of using the app. And they also started the traffic started falling, and then it took us around 4 to 6 months again to open the signups,
Yes.
which had a multi subnet
Multi-subnet, multi-canister backend.
multi-canister backend. Okay. So in hindsight, we would not have done something differently. But as of today, looking at all the current things that definitely has done, or the NNS has done, which is increasing the price, youth of setting up subsequent canisters. You think that we will also look at doing a few things differently sometime in the future? That being said, also I think quite a few people, not quite a few, I think a few people have mentioned in our forums and across our social channels that why do we have 500,000 canisters and we are not letting other projects, have space across subnets? So is it really our fault that we have been doing something like this? And if you think that it's our fault, then how can we go ahead and change the architecture wherein either definitive or we make space for other projects to come in and start building, because at the end we are all in on
Right.
IC and everything.
So
Yeah.
the thing is, again, this is like there's multiple layers to unfold over here. So I think the question is mostly around fairness, and like just because we chose an architecture, every other app in the ecosystem is suffering. Is the point being made? I'm not sure if I don't agree with that point, to be honest. So think of it like this. So if you go to AWS, and I'm taking the example of AWS, but think any cloud. So if you go to a cloud and you host your app, and if your app becomes successful, or let's assume even if it's not successful, but you've over provisioned hardware. So maybe you just need 2 servers, but you've taken up 10 servers. Is it the project's fault that the cloud provider isn't provisioning more nodes fast enough so that other apps can also use them? Should the project consider, hey, Just because I have over provisioned infrastructure, I need to roll it back, or I need to stop my own canisters just so that other apps can also use some of the canisters. Ideally, that's not a fair ask to make. Having said that, we are looking into, and if you look at it from the other perspective, where if the NNS raises price and things, it so you have to look at the ground reality of what is practical and what is possible. So currently onboarding node providers, creating a subnet, and then having the subnet online come online, it takes some time. It can range anywhere from weeks to months, if and which is one of the reasons why, if you look at how the IC is structured and how Definity onboards node providers, they also over provision nodes, and they have, like, imagine 25 to 50% nodes just running, but which haven't yet been inducted into live subnets. The reason
Yeah.
for that is they want to over provision. In case there's a huge demand of new canisters and new nodes, they want to at least have some buffer of availability. So that entire process takes time. So if you have canisters quickly being spun up, the immediate knee-jerk reaction for the protocol is to raise prices so that they can at least reduce the rate at which people are just spinning up canisters and utilizing resources. It's a very natural reaction to have. Subsequently, since prices are raised, at some point you run into cost economics, where you as a project simply cannot keep spinning up at the same pace that you wanted to. But as viral and as like a backend, from an backend infrastructure perspective, we are currently over provisioned to the point where we should be able to take in significant amount of traffic before we need to scale even further. So we have created some buffer and some room for us to be able to grow, and in the meantime we can figure out other scalability mechanisms. There can be multiple approaches to that. Again, we can even look at offloading some very like hot requirements in terms of like having to quickly spin up things. We can offload some of that to web 2 as well. That's a decision to be taken, but currently we have enough infrastructure to be able to scale to anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million active daily users.
Okay. So again, a question next to the things that you mentioned is that would we again need to close down our signups and then subsequently, make the changes to our backend, or we'll be able to continue with this backend that we have already spent almost 2 to 3 years building, and then garner all this traffic. Say if we get 500,000 active users or 1 million active users, so would we need to shut down signups going forward, or can we just continue having this also in place and then subsequently thinking of other places of improving the architecture?
So currently, if you look at the current network capacity of what is possible on the IC, you can give it an approximate number of 1 million total canisters possible to be spun up on the network in general app subnets right now. We have only provisioned 300,000 running canisters and 200,000 canisters as backup. OpenChat has another 200,000 canisters. There's a leeway of another 300,000 canisters that can be provisioned by others. I imagine you can give, like, the entire community probably has anywhere between another 70,000 to 100,000 canisters. So we still have leeway to grow to another 200,000 canisters. If we choose to go down that route where so if we get quick signups, we have to make a couple of very hard decisions. Number one is, either do we keep paying the exorbitant costs of canister creation and canister signup? Because there's another thing to understand. So some months back, I think around 6 months back, there was a new feature launched into the IC which was called cycles reservation mechanism. So this is also a frustration that you'll see in the forums. A lot of developers who are running apps have certainly are overnight realizing that their canister cycle balances have been wiped out, and they're not sure why. So in a lot of cases, the cycle reservation mechanism kicks in once a subnet. So previously we only had flat cycle costs in terms of how much compute or how much storage your canister was using. You only paid that, and that is what you had to put as a balance inside your canister. With the new cycle reservation mechanism, essentially the IC now has beyond a certain size. So a subnet previously was maxed at, I think, 450 gigabytes. Now it's gone up to, I think, 750. it's
Yeah.
increasing progressively. So beyond 450 gigabytes, once a subnet's utilization grows to 450, beyond that, it's going to become more and more costlier to run your canister on that subnet. So essentially, the IC is pushing you to either figure out a mechanism to migrate to a different subnet where it's lower than that threshold, or you're going to have to pay more and more cost to run it at that scale. What we figured out, and this is again something that we had to bypass and figure out because we had doubled down on the single canister, single user model. Which means if we wanted to provision to those subnets, or even imagine like if you have canisters provisioned on them, but you have some very active users who are constantly creating new content or creating new posts, they're creating more data inside those canisters. So then inevitably that subnet is going to breach that limit.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay more and more cycles just to run your canisters there. We had to, with no help from the ecosystem, or I wouldn't blame the ecosystem, but mostly no help from official maintainers of the IC, we had to figure this out by ourselves. How do we dynamically move canisters from one subnet to the other?
So canister snapshot, which I think got tweeted by Dom just a couple of days back, we practically had done that for ourselves,
Long back.
quite a few months back,
Yes.
or almost a year back.
Yes. So we had to again figure all this out where how do you take the entire contents of a canister, serialize that into a flat, imagine like a JSON file, off chain, take an off chain backup, take that entire blob and put it on a new subnet. That way, if that subnet has grown beyond a certain size, we are able to dynamically move users to a different subnet. We had to innovate this because otherwise, the users who were stuck on that subnet, they would have a very poor experience. So we were solving for these things much earlier than most other apps ever ran into these problems. And we had to do this because we were thinking of scaling and thinking of building apps for 1 million users from the very beginning. Right? So we were trying to tackle a lot of problems while also trying to provide the nice user experience, the nice tease that you expect from a TikTok or an Instagram Reels or a YouTube Shorts.
So as far as I understand, the user experience that any user right now gets, say from TikTok or Instagram, they are expecting a very similar user experience if you are a Web3 social app. If you are not giving out that experience, these people will only basically come in for any kind of tokens that you are offering and then subsequently leave. So there'll be no long-term engagement with any users who you are getting by spending a customer acquisition cost. And customer acquisition cost in the Web3 space is primarily the tokens that you give out of the treasury, which is again a value that will go down to a very less figure or practically zero over a period of time if you keep on giving out these
So,
tokens.
a follow up to that. So, in our case, if you look at these spikes of traffic that we were receiving, we had somewhat solved acquisition through a combination of airdrops, sticky mechanisms inside the app, and some like viral hooks in the app. Whereas in things like referral, daily rewards, so on and so forth, you could sort of solve acquisition to a certain degree. How are we planning to sort of solve retention as a long term measure? Because ultimately, if you're just giving out airdrops, you're burning through your uh, token treasury, or you're burning through some treasury mechanism just to get users onto the platform. But how do you keep them on the platform? What does viral intend to do?
So all the experiments that we have run until now, and of course quite a few because we have been in the business for the last 3 odd years, and before that also someone posted about the Naughty Tales. We were doing a lot of influencer campaigns for the Naughty Tales, which was wedding vendor aggregator business and a virtual reality business for the wedding venue. So that was almost 4 years, 2020. Because of the lockdown, we decided to shut that down and move forward. But we have been working with influence for quite some time, and belonging to a country like India, of course, the population is pretty huge. An average influencer in India who has a good enough following will be almost 1 to 2 million people. So essentially, say if we start marketing and these marketers, so these influencers almost charge 200 to 300,000 dollars for putting out a campaign. So say around 1.5 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees in Indian rupees. So if they charge almost 3 to 4 thousand, they'll put up this campaign for their user base, and then we can expect tens or hundreds of thousands of people to come in at that instant as soon as they put out the campaign. So acquisition that way, of course, we understand that if you work with influencers, it's fairly easy. And TikTok also followed the same principles. They were working with Instagram and Facebook influencers when they launched in 2016, 2017, and that's how they garnered their initial user base. So essentially, you pay out some influencers, they put out a message for their followers, and all these followers immediately come onto your app. So of course, we have to have, even today. I don't think we are still ready, but we have to have an app which can onboard tens of thousands of users, or maybe 100,000 users in a span of just a couple of hours of some big influencer putting out, message about us. And that's not just about India. I'm talking about other geographies, be it US, be it Indonesia, be it Nigeria, be it any developing or developed nation. It's the same strategy. You were saying something, sorry.
Yes. So I think you touched upon a very important point, which is acquisition, and primarily what we are focusing on is tying up and creating partnerships with influencers, and especially influencers in India, because India is sort of our home ground and where we come from. So it's much easier for us to make headway there, right? So even our entire team, our entire remote team is based out of India.
Yeah.
So could we quickly show what kind of things that we've been doing on the ground with influencers back in India?
I think we have an Instagram channel which is
Maybe
Viral
we can
India.
take a
I
look.
don't know, like if we can just open it up
Yes,
right now.
let me try.
I don't think you are on Instagram, but we can still try.
Yeah, I think we can try.
Viral India.
I'm not sure how much it will let me scroll, but let's just try. Yeah, let's decline these. Okay. Should we quickly pause and log in and then come back?
Yes, I think. And we are back.
Right. So I think I just looked at the time, and this entire thing is close to 45 minutes. So I think we'll try to keep this one short. We'll probably not cover everything that we had noted in the agenda, but we'll try to do more of these on a regular basis from now on. So that way we cover almost anything and everything that people have to ask of us. And likewise, if we have things to put out there, we want to be able to do this regularly.
I think this week we'll try and cover as many as possible, 2, 3, because there were a lot of open questions from the community members. So we'll try and cover each and every open question in these spaces, and then subsequently, in case someone has any other questions, they can write it down on our socials or our forum post. We'll take up those questions the next time we do this space.
Absolutely. Cool. So now going back to what we were talking about before, we were mostly talking about user acquisition, and in terms of what have we done to sort of try and solve our initial bout of user acquisition problems. And I think you spoke about Viral India. So I just managed to log into Instagram. So I'm not a regular Instagram user, but here you have my logged in Instagram. So we are looking at the Viral India page. So if anybody just wants to search for Viral India, if you Google it, this is the first thing that comes up. It's YRALINDIA.
I'm very surprised that none of the community members have seen or posted this somewhere or the other place. But yeah, this page is specifically for the India audience, and then we have a Viral Global page right now, which is not active, but I think sometime in the future we will make that active as well. But we have hosted quite a few events in India across different cities. I
So
think
approximately when would you say this entire endeavor started?
This endeavor started almost 8 months back. Sometime last year in 2024.
Okay.
And until now, we have done almost 8 to 10 different events wherein we call different creators. Creators are people who create short video content. And quite a few of these creators, almost 40 to 50 of these creators who have a following of more than 25,000, these people turn up to the viral events, and it's mostly community building for us right now because the app is not ready to host such a traffic. So right now we don't call all these people to our app directly, but in the near future we are hoping once we are ready to onboard, say, a few hundreds of thousands of users immediately, we can open up this app and of course build a few engaging features also. We have not touched on the
I think we can get into so many of those features.
Later,
but coming back to this, so you mentioned quite a few events that we've hosted. Are they specifically in a particular part of India, or like how does that work out? Where have you hosted?
So we have been trying to host these events in tier 1 cities. Tier 1 cities is where most of the educated people would stay, or people who are working across different verticals in different industries. So we host these events, say, in cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Surat, Delhi, and the smaller ones, even Pune, Vadodara, some other places in Gujarat like Ahmedabad and so on and so
So what
forth.
I'm hearing is almost everywhere in India where you have creator communities, we go to them and we create relationships
So
and
we
we.
create communities. There is no established creator communities across any of these places. We go there and host these events, like Definitely hosts, all these events across different geographies. We
Mhm,
do viral events across many other places, and then
mhm,
we invite creators. This is something which the creators has they have not experienced until now, primarily because nobody would call them for free or without taking anything in return.
mhm,
But we do community building with these creators,
mhm,
and right now we have a community base of almost 1,000 creators with we have a WhatsApp group. In case anyone wants to join in, they
mhm,
can
mhm,
DM us, or feel free to reach out to
mhm,
me personally. But we have almost 1,000 odd creators based out of India,
mhm,
community of all these 1,000 creators
mhm.
with an average following, say, of between 50 to 100,000.
Okay.
So the overall reach of these creators would be approximately around, say, 10 to 20 or even more, 10 to 20 million or even more.
Yep.
So at one event that all these creators turn up, say 40 to 50 creators, their average reach is almost, say, between 1 to 5 million. One, I would, these are even lesser numbers. I would say
Mhm.
approximately 8 to 10 million.
Sure. So going with that number of 10 million, let's say with just these creators, if we, and like you mentioned, so currently we are just community building and we are creating relationships and we are creating these communities, but right now we don't cash in these communities, right? So if we
Yes.
were to go to them and say, hey, why don't you use viral? And if even one of them tweets this out or shares it on their Instagram or any of their socials, approximately what kind of traffic do we expect to come onto the app?
So, say if we are doing one event which has a cumulative, say with 50 creators, which has a cumulative following of almost 10 million, nothing less than, say, 5%. I would say 40, 50,000, 100,000 users can come in. People who are just coming onto the app. I'm not saying that they'll get retained, but they can come in, say, in a span of just, half an hour or 1 hour or a couple of hours.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of reach these kind of creators have. And of course, they have built this following for the last 7, 8 odd years. They have followers, and at if I really see the numbers, almost 2 to 3% of the people all also buy into the things that these creators are selling.
Hmm.
So they do not have to buy in, in case anything,
Influences, right?
yeah, from us. But also at the same time, these people might come in, but then we have to think about retention strategies on
Mhm.
why these people will stay and not go back ever. So this is a marketing spend that we need to do, say, one of the times later, sometime in the future.
I think we had a bit of technical difficulties in between. I think our video recording stopped, but I think we should be fine now. We're back.
Yeah, so these creators have built their following over the last 7 to 8 years, and
Mhm.
if they try sell something to their followers, almost 2 to 3% people who are following them buy anything. So in our case, we are not selling anything, but essentially, if we ever call these people directly, if we start utilizing this community to get their followers onto our app, we also need to have some kind of engagement features built so
Mhm.
that any user who is coming in, they go ahead and stay.
Mhm.
Another difference that I would want to point out right now is that most of these users are Web2 users. They have
Mhm.
just seen the Instagrams or the TikToks of the world. They have never ever interacted with any Web3 app. They do not understand what blockchain is. They do not understand what cryptocurrency is, or what a token is. Nothing of that sort. So we need to have the app in place wherein all these users come in, but they can, say, play around with their friends or think about this is an in-game token. But then there are also methodologies wherein methods in place wherein you can cash out these tokens and take that money back into not USDC or USDT, but directly into INR. So
Mhm.
that's something that we need to think about, because
Yep.
these people are really not exposed to how the technology works or how Web3 works.
True. So going back to something that you pointed out, and I sort of want to double click into that. So these users can bring in hundreds on thousands of users within minutes. And we had already experienced this quite a few times in the past, where through some airdrop campaign or through some marketing that we did, essentially we managed to onboard a lot of users really fast, and every time we would get stuck with the app's backend. So essentially the app would not be able to scale and everybody would have a poor experience where we would have to stop sign up. So this is top of mind for us in terms of being able to support an experience where if you have a lot of users coming in, everybody should be able to sign up, everybody should be able to log in, everybody should be able to access content and upload content. That has to be solved first. Without that, we cannot even start partnering up with these content creators and expect them to bring their following from the traditional web 2 world that they're used to.
Yeah, so it will be a lot of wasted cost from our point of view, because say if we start doing that, also we start getting one or the other say influencer posting things about us, about our app. Even if these users come in, first of all the retention things have not been in place, so that's one thing that we need to start working on. And the other thing is, of course, if the app cannot scale, if it's a poor experience as compared to any other web 2 app, be it TikTok or Instagram or any other app, that YouTube Shorts, then they'll never come back. They are getting much better scrolling experience in mobile apps on TikTok or on Instagram or on with much better content, and their friends are also on those apps. So it's again a cold start problem for all social media platforms, which someone mentioned on the forums also. But these are all the things that we need to solve for together, and not just one thing at a time. So it's not like you can just solve scaling first and then we start solving for how to garner creators or their followers or retention. All these things need to solve simultaneously, I would say.
So going back to that train of thought, so I think it's very important to sort of also now talk about some of the front end features that we worked on, which enables these kind of use cases. So, but going back to what we were talking about, so we expect users, or rather users expect us to have a minimum set of features in terms of both being able to scale but also on the front end. So essentially, if they're already used to the Instagrams and the TikToks of the world, they expect an app that is just as polished and just as seamless, even if it's a Web3 app. So for
and they don't understand. So the users that we are trying to garner, they don't understand Web3 at all. So essentially, we have to package all the Web3 things in the Web2 way, wherein all the experience that they currently get, say from TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts, they would want to have on our app. Otherwise, we can't get these people. Otherwise, we'll need to start targeting again the Web3 people, which again tens or thousands of apps are targeting, who are building in the Web3 space, and the user base of Web3 is not growing pretty fast. So if we have to become a mainstream social app in the Web3 space, then we need to have everything Web2. Like the UI UX should be Web2. A user coming in should not go ahead and say
exactly.
that it's a Web3 app and I don't understand tokens, I don't understand what's DAO, and there's
Exactly.
nothing. All these things need to be abstracted for the end user who is coming in, especially the kind of users that we are looking to onboard, say in the next few months, years.
So I remember this one incident. So we went up to a couple of creators initially, and this is how I imagine, or I think I remember this incident because this is how the Viral India page was born. So we had gone up to a couple of creators and we had asked them to check out our app and tell us if they would use it, and if not, why wouldn't they use it, right? And one of the first things that they had told us was some of them actually tried out the app. So they had gone to, I think back then we were called Hot or Not. So they had gone to the Hot or Not app and they tried scrolling, and they would get a lot of not safe for work content. So essentially a lot of like semi-nude, violent content that is not acceptable.
It was mostly semi-nude as far as I remember.
Yeah. So
and a lot of people like that also. I would not say that everyone was hating it. I think when people were opening it up in front of their friends, family, especially family, they were not liking that content. But generally, the traffic showed that a lot of people like that kind of content.
So even
also.
a lot of IC ecosystem
Builders.
members, not just builders, but I think a lot of community members had told us that this is not safe. I can't open it in front of my family, and they would point and say it's a soft porn app, right? So we had to work towards a solution that would solve this kind of a challenge. And even for creators told us like, hey, I've built my reputation over multiple years, and I cannot just put my content on a platform that also supports this kind of, right? And likewise, we also had, so when we started, we focused solely on the web app and on the progressive web app. But in the back of our minds, we knew always that mobile app had to be solved at some point, because again, every user who uses these apps on a regular basis, they want to use it via the mobile app, because mobile apps obviously have some seamless features that you can in the current state of the web never get on the
So
web.
can we give out a mobile app right now to our users?
Uh,
Can we give out a test flight version?
I don't want to show it right now. Maybe we do it
No,
in the
but we
next
can put
version.
out a link maybe if people would want to see.
So there are limitations on how many people
10,000
can.
people, I know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So still,
Do
yeah,
you,
again, we can think about it and put out a link, but that should happen very soon.
Sure. I think, anyways, we are targeting this week for a submission to the App Store. So if that goes through, we might as well, we will have the actual iOS app.
Okay. Okay.
Right. But going back to what I was trying to talk about, so I wanted to hone in and double click on the feed itself. So the current feed that you see, it's actually backed by AI. It is using machine learning to serve content that is customized to your preferences. So in the past couple of days, quite a few community members have pointed out, hey, why am I getting the same videos over and over? And I think one of the community members said that this is like a list of 100 videos.
YSMYS.
Yes. So he pointed out and said this is a list of 100 videos looping over
And
and
that's why
over.
you're a scam.
That's questionable. I would reserve judgment and probably like defer judgment to the DAO and to the community, right? But maybe.
But how many videos do we have in total?
So
Almost.
currently we have close to upwards of 300,000. Maybe I
Is
can
it
quickly show
possible,
you.
yeah, that you can show us like how many
Sure.
videos?
I think we are jumping all over the place. I would also quickly just maybe wrap up this thread of discussion. So this is mostly related to Viral India. Maybe we could just quickly show a couple of events that we've conducted,
we have
and then
just
when
hosted,
I can go back to the technical discussion. So here, I think if we just quickly look at the stories, we did like a Holi party recently.
Yes, I think that was just on the 14th, couple of days back.
Perfect. Let's.
So you can also see it was how many days before? Yeah, 3 days before.
It's
in the
just 3
top.
days.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think these are some events. These are all creators.
A combined following of more than, I would say, 10 million people. All these people combined have. So it's like such a huge number. If they start posting about the viral app, we can just garner tens of thousands of users on the same day.
So definitely very promising, but we have to have the app in a state where it can support their expectations, and if they associate with us, they shouldn't feel disappointed
Yeah.
associating with us, and we need to take the app to a state, both the front end and the back end. I'll quickly show some other events that we've also conducted. I think the next story, do you want to talk about the podcast? Maybe we do that
I think
later.
we can talk about it a bit later, but we
Okay.
can also put out
I'll just-
few links of
So maybe I'll just show the events
Christmas
today,
party,
and
yeah.
then
You can show a few,
Yep,
things from
yep,
the Christmas
yep,
party.
Yep. I think these are all photos that we were there. I think this took place in Mumbai.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think this is a creator dancing. Let's see if I can find the photo of all of us together. I think there was a group photo. Let me check. These are again all photos from the event. Quite a few photos.
Yeah. Quite a few creators who came in.
Exactly. It's all dancing, having fun. Yeah, I think I
This
finally
is-
found a photo of myself. But I think this was a giveaway at the very end,
This
right?
is
For
this
the
was
best.
12 weeks back. Yeah, this is a Christmas party that's happening.
I think this is from the venue itself.
Yeah.
This is in Mumbai.
So in short, I think anyone can check out our Instagram channel and can see, what kind of events.
And we've
we
been
do.
doing this for quite some time. So if I keep going, there's like the Bangalore event, there's a Mumbai meetup, there's Vadodara, so on and so forth, right? Cool. I think we'll jump back into the other question that you had asked, which was around our
Total number of
total
videos.
number
that
of
we have.
videos that we have. So let me see. So we are opening up Cloudflare, and I feel like a logical question that anybody would want to ask is, why is videos hosted on the cloud? And
I think we can cover this a bit later because it's again a long topic.
Sure.
So it will take another
yep,
20 minutes of conversation. But
Yep.
in case you have a brief of say a minute, you can talk
sure.
about it.
So I think going back to how the IC functions, the IC is very well at storing data that is intended for databases, but it isn't for. Hold on, I'll just quickly find this and then I'll go back to that question. Just a second. So this is a product from Cloudflare that we are using called Stream, primarily for the ease of use in terms of hosting videos and then streaming videos and a bunch of other features. But if I just go to the bottom, So this is the total number of videos that we currently have in the library. It's 201,985, and this is close to 55,000 minutes of video. This is again all videos that users and mostly community members or people who use the app, they've uploaded. And in terms of like short videos, we have close to, this is the number that we're looking at.
Which is of course much more than 100, but essentially for a social platform, again we understand that this number is not too high, and getting an apt feed for how a user behaves is also a bit difficult with not such a big number. So say this number needs to go up to a few millions, sooner than later. So of course, we'll be targeting this also a bit later, but right now we are still in the infra space and in the early life cycle of a social app.
And sort of the expectation is, so apps like us, they get bouts of growth. During those bouts, you'll suddenly have a huge influx of users who are constantly uploading content. And without that content in place, if you look at a feed, this feed is powered by AI. So what the AI is looking at is a couple of things. It's looking at recency, it's looking at popularity, it's looking at your preferences, and one other filter that we had put in was around the NSFW and safe content. I'll sort of come back to that. I think we skipped that discussion. But so when the AI feed looks at all of these things, it's trying to gauge if you will find a particular piece of content interesting or not. So in our case, and going back to something that that community member had shown, where you have two separate pieces of incognito windows, and then he scrolled on both of them, and at some point the both of the feeds were showing the same content. And essentially what he wanted out was, hey, this is the same content. Do you only have like 100 videos? So the way this feed works is, it is first serving you 15 videos from a global cache. This global cache gets updated every 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes, our system goes and looks at what are like the most recent videos, which is getting a lot of traction or which is more or less popular in terms of watch time, in terms of likes received, so on and so forth. And based on that, it creates a global feed. Now, that global feed is served to a not logged in user, a user who has come in for the first time. So in this case, the user who was showing that, he had actually both of the apps, he had not logged in. He had just opened the app, and on both of them, he was scrolling. So our feed looks at that, serves him 15 videos, and if he has any engagement on any one of them, imagine if there's a cake video in one or a cat video in another, if he had interacted with any of them, it would have taken that as a sign of interest. However, the user did not interact with either, and he was just scrolling. So then the app in both the cases doesn't know if they have any preference or not. So it was just giving it that user more popular content from our list of content to see if they would react to any of them. That is how the thing functions. But I think I can sort of demonstrate a couple of further things as we are talking about this. So if I go back here, yeah, and I'm logged into Instagram and this, but let's see if I can open an incognito window. And I'll just quickly share that 1 second. Yes. So let's look at the top 3 short video apps currently. On our app, you can sort of at least go to the landing page without logging in. You are able to consume content because we are trying to guess what you might like or not like. Most of the other apps don't even have that mechanism. So on an x.com, I can't literally interact with the app at all. I have to give it some interaction data. I have to log in, and then I have to choose. So if you remember logging in on Twitter for the first time or x.com for the first time, you would actually have to choose some specific topics that you like or not. If I open up YouTube Shorts, this is a good example. You'll see in a while. If I go to Shorts, yeah, I'm going to reject this. Notice the watermelon, this. Okay, I'll just refresh the page. Is the exact same feed you're getting again, right? So even YouTube operates very similar to how we are operating, in that unless you give it interaction data where you like something, you watch something, you spend some time watching a video, it doesn't know what to suggest to you next. So what it's looking at is right now in the world, what is new, what is popular. It's trying to suggest you, hey, would you be interested in looking at any of them? If I take this, so just remember this, there's like a watermelon video here, right? If I close this out and open YouTube Shorts. That watermelon video is too. So maybe we can take a look at another one. So Instagram Reels again, from what I remember, you can't look at,
I think yeah, it will be blocked
yes, unless
for
you
you to
log in,
watch. Yeah,
they'll not.
because it picks up preferences while you're
Yes,
logging. Right?
yes. So
So in our case, what does a user need to do so that the preferences come in? So does he need to log in? Does he need to interact with some kind of content, watch full videos, like the particular video? Or so this particular user just opened up the same feed in two different apps, like you did for YouTube Shorts, and nothing changed because even for YouTube Shorts, nothing is changing.
yes.
So how does one make the algorithm understand what kind of preferences a person has,
Yep.
and shouldn't be intuitive also?
Yep. So in most cases, the way we've made it is you either have to watch a video till the end or almost till the end to express interest. So the platform recognizes, okay, if they're not constantly scrolling but stayed on this video and watch that video, that is a sign of interest. Or if you dedicatedly go and press the heart button on a video, our system gets to recognize, okay, this user is giving me a positive affirmation that they want to watch more of this content. And then subsequently, as you scroll through the platform, you'll notice you'll get similar content more and more and more. That is how our system
And are
recognizes.
there any other signals except say watching a video say to 80% or liking a video? Are there any other signals that
So these are the
the
positive affirmations that you can give to the system. The system, anyways, is optimizing for a couple of other things. It's looking at something called recency bias. It's looking at popularity in terms of what is popular currently from its uh, entire library of videos. It's looking at interaction data. So essentially now, once you start interacting with the app, and imagine like I come onto the app and Rishi comes onto the app. If I like a couple of cat videos and I've consistently been spending time looking at other videos, which might be dog videos or goat videos. If Rishi likes a couple of cat videos, the propensity that he'll like those kind of similar videos is also being predicted by the algorithm. So it tries to learn over time. But right now, since the corpus of videos that we have is so small, there's only a limited subset of things that it can recommend. And this is the cold start problem that almost every app faces. So I think in the long run, we want to incentivize uploading of new content via tokens, which is something unique that we can do. Again, Web3 apps have this superpower where they can incentivize users to do things, but there is no two ways roundabout for
But
this.
was it difficult building this AI feed, or was it pretty simple? You just took off, something like a chat GPT and just plugged in into a system, and it was running the way we would want, or it took us again, weeks or months of painstaking effort to
Yeah.
first understand, how the AI on our video platform would work, and then subsequently what would we need to do out of this AI, and how was the model trained, and did we just take it off the shelf from somewhere?
So, pretty involved question. I'll try to sort of break it down, but I'll try to keep it brief. The idea is, let's give it a bit of historical context. So, when we first started, we had a canister based recommendation model. It was a very simple thing that would show the same kind of videos to everybody. So, back then, we first tried to see if recommendation feeds was something that we could do on chain or not. We tried quite a few different variations of that, but essentially it would go along something the lines of every video uploaded to the platform, we would look at different criteria. So number of likes received, number of hours watched, uh, number of hot or not played, so on and so forth. There were quite a few data points in there. Based on that, we would calculate a score for that video, and then everybody who comes on the platform, they would get the recommendation feed at that point of time as calculated inside that canister. So we would have like a ranked feed of multiple videos that have been uploaded to the platform. The problem with this was there was zero personalization. So if Rishi comes onto the platform and if I come to the platform at the same time, we would receive the same thing no matter how differently we are interacting with content. This was one problem that we had to solve. The second thing was, like I mentioned, there was a lot of NSFW content that we needed to take care of. Especially in the Web3 space, you'll find when you give people pseudo-anonymous identities, they tend to do things that they usually would not do if they had an associated identity. So we used to receive a lot of NSFW content on the platform as well. So we set out to solve that using AI. And again, when we say we set out to solve these things, you have to appreciate that even for the back end thing that we develop, the AI things that we are developing, even the front end things that we are developing, we can't just start out, because if you remember when we did the SNS, we were only two people. There were only two people on the team who were engineers.
Yeah.
From there, right now we are at a healthy, I think, 12 people on the team. This hiring takes time. To grow the team takes time because we have to be very selective and very careful of who we let onto the team. If you look at in general across the entire IC ecosystem, first there was Motoko, but we chose to go down the Rust route. Even then, finding canister developers, finding Rust developers is very hard. The amount of talent pool available out there, it's not that great. So most of the people, we were not hiring for a particular skill. What we were hiring for is high IQ, ability to communicate, and then being able to learn things fast and being able to onboard to our way of doing things. We spent significant amount of, we still do in matter of fact. So I think approximately out of all the things that I do in terms of work in an entire week, I probably spend anywhere between 30 to 40% of my time just interviewing on a regular basis. Because I think, again, we probably interview around 20 people where we probably like one person. That is the kind of ratio that we're working with. So we are constantly hiring and we are having to scale this team while having to also solve these problems. We spent months hiring team, and in the meanwhile we were building this. So as we are doing this, so going from 2 people to 10, 12 people, it's a continuous process. I just wanted to sort of put that in the back of your mind, because it's not like we had a ready-made team who we just gave the problem and then voila, you just have a solution. It's not like that. We first have to solve the problem of finding the people who are going to help us solve this problem. And then we look at, okay, now what is available out there. So if you look at any sort of recommendation feed, there's no one size fits all solution, open source solution in the market that you can just lift off the shelf and have it work for you. That doesn't exist. There's some proprietary APIs, but they don't perform that well because it's not tuned or trained on your data. In our case, we had specific needs in terms of people interacting with social data and short videos. And if you look at like the broader Web 2 world, there's like a couple of big players. There's Instagram Reels, there's TikTok, there's YouTube Shorts. They're all proprietary companies, and like their algorithms are the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So they're not going to just open source that and put it out in the world. So we had to figure this out for ourselves with limited data from scratch with a team that we had not yet hired, right? That takes time, that takes effort, that takes a lot of experimentation and persistence. Only then do we solve that. So ultimately, I think it took us anywhere between 3 to 4 months just to get to exactly, okay, this is what we want to build, this is how we want to do it. And then another 1 month or so of effort, 1.5 months of effort before we finally had like one iteration of the feed that you see now. Again, this has some revisions applied on top of it, but it is built on the foundation that we laid back then. It is capable of a couple of things which we sort of want to point out, because one of the big challenges, as I was also talking about, is the mobile app that we wanted to do, right? So app stores have very strict policy in terms of what content is allowed on the app stores or not. If you have any sort of NSFW content with a video based front end, they're not going to allow you at all. They have zero tolerance towards it, especially Apple app stores. You're not going anywhere with that kind of content. So we had to solve that, and we had to solve it definitely. Also appreciate a big platform like Facebook or any of these large platforms, they have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of moderators working full time just to flag all of these content pieces, right? We had a team of 12 developers. We did not have the budget, the manpower, the bandwidth to do any of these things at scale in terms of doing it manually. So we had to also solve for the fact that NSFW content has to be flagged by an AI. And again, if you go and search for this, or if you look at the existing infrastructure for this, it's not at all worth using at scale. You simply cannot afford to have any misses in this case. So we figured out a mechanism to do this where we have one feed which is the cleanest of feeds where you have zero NSFW content, and we solve that using AI to be able to do this at scale. So right now the culmination of all of this effort is Viral.com, which is a completely clean feed, all clean content, and then you have hotornot.wtf, which is our old domain. We divert all of the NSFW content towards that. This is sort of an experiment that we've been doing for the last couple of months. In the future, what we expect to do is on the web, where it is slightly more tolerant towards users' preferences and content policies are not laid upon you. With the Web3 motto in mind, essentially, we want to give users a mechanism so that they can choose to enable NSFW content if they choose to on viral.com. If they don't, and they don't opt into that, essentially, it's completely clean content. On the app stores, like I mentioned, everything will be clean and it will be done at scale using AI.
So basically, we have two feeds now. One is viral.com, which is a family safe feed. So essentially, you can go ahead and watch those videos in front of your friends, family, anyone. And then we have the hotornot.wtf feed, which is the old feed, primarily the old feed that we had, which is a lot of edgy content, a lot of partial nudity, and so on and so forth. In case anyone wants to, go ahead and watch this type of edgy content, they can, go ahead. So basically, we transitioned from hot or not to viral, not just because of the trademark issue that we were facing in the US, which we had already posted a bit of information about on the different forums, but also we wanted a name which is fairly common in the social space. People pronounce it, use it
Do
in
you
their
want
daily
to talk?
conversation.
Do you want to talk a bit about like why did we? Because I think this is another question that we've consistently been getting. Like, why the four name changes? Why do you guys constantly keep jumping between name changes? So maybe we can talk a bit about what led us from the name Hot or Not to the name Viral.com.
So again, as I just mentioned, we were getting a lot of hot content in Hot or Not because, and of course, people were incentivized to play a game also on Hot or Not, which was called Hot or Not. So essentially, if you vote hot and the video is hot, then you get some tokens. Or and basically, if you vote with the majority. But if you vote against the majority, you lose the tokens that you staked, and then you could stake it between 10, 50, or 100 tokens while you were playing this game. So, and the content, people who are uploading the content, so basically content creators or content uploaders in our case, not a lot of people create content right now on our platform. That is something again we can cover a bit later in subsequent episodes. A lot of people are content uploaders, or maybe they would have set up bots also, which of course at our current scale we don't understand. But all these content creators or uploaders, these people get used to get a lot of some commission out of the people who are playing the hot or not game, on the hot or not platform. So these content uploaders understood that if they upload hot content, they would get say 5% of all the commissions being played, and of course all the people were also voting hot. So essentially it was a loop wherein a lot of hot content was coming onto the hot or not platform because people were voting hot every time they were playing the
I
game.
think this goes back to this motto, like there's three G's of the internet, right? So there's, I think, gambling, there's giving.
Girls.
Yeah, yeah. So I
So
think those are
yeah,
the three G's. So essentially, we were enabling such features not knowingly, but as we had those viral moments because it ties back into this, like the internet's tendency to promote these kind of content, right?
yeah. So I think the name was always catchy, and of course it made our life a bit easier because people were able to understand. But then subsequently, after the SNS, we had this global ambition. So hence one was of course the legal things because of which we had to look at, and of course before the SNS, it all these things are too expensive to even getting a trademark across different geographies in the world. It's too difficult, or it's too costly to even go ahead and check out or explore or apply for it. So that's something that we always wanted to solve. While we had a bit of financial capital, and of course the next thing was that because of the catchy name and the catchy game, which was again a retention strategy. Like even today, gamification on social as far as we understand, is a kind of engagement strategy. It's a kind of retention strategy that if you're coming in, if you're putting some kind of hard work, or while you're getting entertained, you're playing some game additionally, and you're getting some kind of monetary rewards out of it. We have seen in the past that this has resulted in user growth, all the in spikes, say over the last 2 3 odd years. And this is our still our hypothesis that if we enable multiple games across a short video platform, there'll be pretty high retention. We are yet to do that on viral for now. But coming back to hot or not, so these were two things that we wanted to solve for. So one was that how do we get more content, engaging content, which is general content in nature, and not just edgy content. So that was one thing, and because of that, we had to again think of a brand name which people use in day-to-day language. So viral is something that people use for videos and social content, and this was again suggested by one of our community members, Domi, someone on Twitter. He got, I
I
think, a
think
reward of
we, yes,
50 ICP
yeah,
against that.
yeah.
So viral was the brand name which we chose because people were able to speak it fluently, and it was suggested by one of our community members, Tommy. We ran a naming competition on Twitter, and I think the reward was around 50 ICP, which Tommy got for helping us. I think again, we have been playing with the letters viral. Some people still call it Yral, or people who do not understand why all these
I've
letters
also
are
heard
together.
Yral being called. It's not just Yral,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Yarl, and quite a few different connotations.
Yeah,
But what I'm hearing is basically a brand name or a name is simply a way for us to market ourselves, right? So we shouldn't have to stick to a name if that doesn't reflect the current direction we are headed, and also if a new name sort of lets us inject more enthusiasm or new energy into our brand.
I think I would not totally agree. The name should always be related to the vision that you have of the company, and hence, I think Meta has its name now, which was Facebook before, primarily because their focus is now the metaverse. Or I think over the last 2 3 years, before AI came in, they might change the name again. So that's one, and then even something like an alphabet, which was Google, and they had a couple of names before. So while your vision evolves, your brand should evolve with that. And viral for us was primarily because we wanted to be a generic platform and not just a platform for the Web3 degen space, because the audience is pretty low. You can't become a very big social platform if you have very small number of users who are even uploading smaller number, like like a very small quantum of videos. So to become a real social platform wherein if you are trying to compete with something like a TikTok or Instagram Reels, you need to think about how can you garner millions or maybe billions of everyday users and not just users from a specific sect or a group. And I think this is a large disparity, right, between what we are looking to do right now and how a few community members would want us to work. They would maybe want us to create single canister models or single subnet models, and think about onboarding small number of users. On the contrary, we are looking to onboard directly a few 100,000 or maybe a million users directly in a very short period of time. And for the things that we want to do, there are a lot of different things that we have to do, both technically and marketing wise and so on and so forth. But other than that, I think a few community members would want to see us progressively evolving, so say one user at a time. But again, these are two different strategies, and no one knows what is the right strategy at what period of time. We are hedging our bets on the opposite strategy, wherein we are hoping that we'll be able to garner a lot, pretty huge user base in a
Yep.
very short period of time, because that has already happened with us a couple of times.
Yep, I think history tells us that that is the kind of growth loops that we've seen quite a few times, and it makes sense for us to place our bets there as opposed to trying to grow linearly with time and then see like every couple of days can I get some.
But again, there's no right or wrong path,
Sure.
towards any of the
But
strategy.
then if you err on this side, you can anyways absorb the kind of traffic that you get on a linear basis.
Of
That you're
course,
already
of
solved
course,
for.
of course. So these are two different strategies, and I think we took the other way around. The second strategy, wherein we are building to onboard millions. Of course, it takes a bit of time. It's not like today, if the platform would have been ready, say if the platform would be ready for engagement features or attention features, we could just market it from tomorrow. Right now we are still in the building phase. We can talk a bit more about the games that we are building
Do you want to
on the
reserve
different
that for
videos. Of
maybe the
course,
next
yeah,
episode?
it's already,
I think we
I
are close
think,
to over 1.5 hours, and
yeah,
at this
over
point, I
one and a
think.
half hours. Yeah, so it's quite a long time, but of course we have a lot of things to cover, which we'll cover in the subsequent videos that we create. But the thing is that if you want to become a generic social platform, then everything needs to be thought at scale and not just for a very small community of users or a very small set. And for doing any kind of testing or just to evaluate our hypothesis, we have already done that at our level.
Yes.
I think when we had a single canister all user model, that was way back in 2022 2021 when we started in the IC. We had already explored
I
that.
think back then we were called Go Bazinga. So that's like the first name Go Bazinga, then we went to Hot or Not, then we went to Viral. I think, well,
Which will always be viral. So essentially, viral is still staying as a content platform for all family safe videos, and then Hot or Not goes into the the
not
other,
safe
yeah,
for work
yeah,
content. And I think we
NFSW.
can get into like the fourth name. We are probably not getting into that today, but we can reserve discussion for that in the subsequent episode. We can dive deep into exactly what, why, how, and so on and so forth. Maybe we don't broach that topic today.
Yeah, so all in all, it's been a very long journey for us. 2021, we started in the IC space, and before that, of course, we are not new entrepreneurs. We had a business. We had to shut it down in
I
2020
think
because
somebody on the forum sort of did some detective work, and they found out that we had two businesses prior. I It's being projected as like a negative thing, but it's always good to have veteran builders try new things, and that is how they sort of, so no, like very few people can claim that they had success on the very first try. So you have to be able to experiment, you have to be able to iterate, and that is how you improve, and ultimately you find the right solution, right? So uh, again, we can probably dig deeper into some of our past businesses, but I feel like at this point we can constrain discussion to IC specific things. But if community members have questions around our past dealings and our past businesses, we are happy to go down that route as well.
so in the subsequent videos, I think if we can try and come up with some videos sometime this or the next week, we'll cover our authentication system. We have a few things written
So
down.
we have
So
quite a few different things to cover that we want to, but we would probably invite everybody who's watched this to give us your questions. If you have anything else that you would want us to cover, anything that is a burning question, anything that you feel is a concern, maybe you have questions around governance, DAO, anything at all, feel free to ask us. All of our Twitter as well as other social channels will be shared at the end of this video. We'll also be sharing this on our social channels. So feel free to ask us questions there. We'll collate everything in a single place, answer your questions, even from the forums, as well as cover any of the other items that we have pending. We have quite a few different things that we want to cover.
essentially, I think we can wrap this up. But over the forums, we have been getting a bit of negativity from a certain set of users or people who are community members, and we would want to clarify that this has been our focus for the last 3 to 4 odd years. We have been putting our heads down and just building. It has not been an easy journey. It never is, for anyone. Right from building the first version of the app, which was a single canister, single multiple user app, to this having this architecture and doing all these events, having a team of 12 odd developers, another 7 8 team members who work on different aspects of the business, to be able to establish future roadmap and create what the vision would look like, say 10 years down the line. Nothing has been easy at all, and pointing out fingers is fairly easy from anyone that you have not done this or you have not done that. We would want to have quantum, like if you have any specific questions, please feel to reach out to us. We would be pretty happy to answer those specific questions, but we would want to refrain from name calling or doing any kind of other activities which are not in the right spirit of not just our business but even for the IC. And we would please request you to, if you have any specific question about any detail about the DAO, we would be pretty happy to answer that. And again, I think our dream is to make this pretty big. It's again we pretty difficult to say, but we would want to reach it to a TikTok or an Instagram level sometime in the future, maybe a decade from now, or a couple of decades from now. But our intentions are always right, and like people who know us, they already know that we are working hard. We have been working hard, and there has never been any ill intention for anything that we have been doing regarding the business or otherwise. We have quite a few other domains. So we talked about two domains. We'll talk about two more domains, and why did we even start working on these two domains, and the culmination of all the things that we have developed, say at Dollar AI. And also at the same time, we would want to talk about how we thought about revenue generation, and why did we even come up with a platform which can share user data, say from Viral to other different apps, and how are we thinking of having this entire platform plug-in into say different apps in the future. Again, these things will take I think hours and hours individually. So if you would
Yep.
want to have any kind of information regarding something specific of all the things that we covered today, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer those in the social forums or anywhere else.
I think that's a good place to wrap. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I think we'll see you next time.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.